All right, are you still seeing it? Okay, excellent. Want to welcome everybody to our August 2022 Charlotte area SharePoint user group meetup. My name is Andy. I'm going to kick things off here today before turning it over to our friend, colleague, and super presenter, Ryan. Notice a lot of new faces, a lot of new names. I want to welcome you to our online community. If you're in the Charlotte area, I hope to be able to go back to in person sometime soon. It just hasn't worked out yet. But we are trying to figure out logistics to see all of your smiling faces once again. But joining in here online, we're making great use of Microsoft Teams, and we have been throughout the pandemic as hopefully we're coming out on the back end of that. With that, just want to give you a little bit of information about the Charlotte area SharePoint user group, all the different ways that you can engage with us and our content and interact with us. So first and foremost, Meetup is probably one of the best places to find us, casug.org. That's CASUG.org will redirect you to our meetup group. That's our main community now. So we post our upcoming events, we post the links to our recordings, but it's also a place for you to ask questions and engage with me and all the other members, organizers of the Charlotte area SharePoint user group. So meetup's going to be one of the main places that we interact. We are active on social media. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn as well. We have a LinkedIn group and a LinkedIn page. The group's actually owned by a previous organizer. We have not been able to get that ownership passed over. So we have a main page that we work with out of there. But we do have our own Facebook group. That's a great place to engage if you're there. And then Twitter's probably where we're most active in the social media space. So feel free to follow us, interact with us through there. Questions, comments, conversation. We are all for that. So find us on all these different social media locations. You'll also find that we have a Yammer community, but where I think we're kind of phasing out that Yammer community at this point. It's not really active anymore. It is a external Yammer community. There are some people that are still posting things every now and then, but the engagement's pretty low there. So the main point to interact with us is going to be through Meetup. All right, so with that, the other place that I want to mention that you should hopefully engage with us is actually through our YouTube channel. We have tried for the last few years now, any session that we deliver to post that to our YouTube channel. We've seen a lot of growth, a lot of subscribers, and a lot of views of our content. And we realize we have long form content. Most of our sessions are about an hour. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. So we understand that those, staying engaged and throughout the video can be a little bit challenging, but that's why you can play it at 1.5 or 2 times the normal speed. But on the subtitles, you can blast through that if you need. But we do encourage you to engage with us through YouTube. We are seeing a lot more traffic there, a lot more engagement, and a lot of subscribers. So feel free to follow us over there. So with that being said, housekeeping out of the way, I'm going to stop sharing and head back to the main screen. We are very fortunate to have my friend and our super colleague in the Microsoft community, Ryan Schouten, with us here today. Met Ryan, I think it's been 7 years ago now. I think it was SharePoint Engage in Raleigh, 2015. I think we first met. You were actually coming all the way from Utah at the time for that event, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since. You are now in Southern California, am I correct?
That is correct.
What part are we coming
sunny
from?
Southern California.
My brothers live in Southern California. I need to go and visit and spend some time there. I know the weather is much nicer there year-round versus what we're dealing with. What is it, 70 year-round there for you?
Well, not where I'm at. I'm more inland, so I'm about an hour and a half-ish north of San Diego, but inland, in the mountains. So nice part is I'm inland enough that I actually have property. I've got 5 acres that I live on with fiber, so can't complain.
5 acres and fiber. Wow, you are living the dream, my man. So you've had some big changes over the last couple of years. I know I've seen you kind of grow your career, going from some smaller organizations to some larger organizations over the last couple of years. But you've now decided to venture out into the waters of business ownership and kind of doing your own thing. You want to dive into that just a little?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned, I've worked with various size companies, from large government contractors to small consulting companies to video game companies. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. Uh, love the company. Great place to work. Just they decided they were going to Google, and I said, yeah, I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready to put my career hat, put a pin in Google. I was like, nope. I can manage it. I can understand it, but not my forte. We got a lot better tools here in Microsoft 365. And the way I tell people is Google, Microsoft 365, both will get you to where you want to go. Kind of like commuting in a car. A Kia and a BMW are both going to get you there, but one's a whole lot nicer about how you get there.
That's a very interesting description, comparing Google and Microsoft to a Kia and a BMW. Google Sheets is not for you, I see.
Well, there's some cool, don't get me wrong, there are some really cool things that I wish Excel had that Google Sheets does have. Like one of the things I found is primarily the ability to permissions trim a section of a sheet. You can't do that in Excel.
Right.
Google, I can say, hey, I want this section only visible to these people. Done. I was like, oh, come on, Microsoft, get that one going. Google's had that one for a long time. But
well, there's always room for new features and updates. I know I have a little bit of product envy. There's some things that I really like in the Microsoft world, and then there's some things from some competitors that I really like, and I'm like, it'd be really cool if you could get this, but there's always room for that improvement. So I'm really happy for you moving out into the entrepreneur world and exploring that world. I actually went the other way. I was a sole proprietor for a number of years, and now I work for a major healthcare system in the Carolinas. So I've kind of gone in the opposite direction. But it's really interesting to see the career growth and the path and the way that things kind of evolve. Speaking of evolution, you got a pretty awesome talk lined up for today, and I want to make sure that we give you a lot of time to discuss this. I know a lot of people were really interested in this topic, and I look forward to not only the presentation, but counting the number of views that pop up on YouTube afterward as we go. So I'm going to turn things over to you now. We'll circle back at the end, have a little bit more Q&A and some follow-up, but we're here today to talk about Forms, PowerApps, and Teams through Flow. So with no further ado, I'm going to let you kick it off. I'll be here monitoring if you need anything. People, feel free to use the chat window and if you have any questions or anything, and we'll go from there. So Ryan, it's all you.
Thank you. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So while I'm getting things spun up here, I have a form. If we can get some, if you can fill out, just respond to that, basic information, nothing personal, just hey, what have you used? Because that'll kind of drive the discussion as we're going further on today. So without further ado, my name is Ryan Schouten. A little bit about myself. I've been working with SharePoint for over 14 years now. Started with SharePoint the end of 2006. So early to SharePoint 2007 was just barely released. I've done some migrations and things from 2003 all the way on up. I am a Microsoft MVP. I keep forgetting I need to update that. So it's now M365 apps and services as of July. Also, as Andy mentioned, I have a couple companies that I own, one of which is Emperor Media Group, which is a company that our whole job, what we do is we help companies run events easier. So whether it's in-person events, whether it's hybrid, whether it's 100% virtual, going into the pandemic, we realized, hey, there are a lot of people, a lot of companies that don't understand what's available to them and how to produce a high quality event for their teams, whether it's a company town hall or a huge event of thousands of people. So that's the primary purpose of that one. As Andy mentioned, I also started my own company back in early May. I'm the CEO of Mahay Consulting. It's one of those things that, interesting story, I spent a couple of years in Madagascar. Their local language is called Malagasy. And so while I was there, constantly, like as you go to any country with a different language, people are constantly asking you, hey, do you speak this language? In Malagasy, Mahay means skilled. So I always had to respond that I was little skilled in speaking Malagasy. So it's one of those phrases I used enough over a couple of years that it now became part of my vernacular. And it's like, okay, when I came to time to start my own company, it's like, yeah, no, when it comes to Malagasy, I'm still not very Mahay, but when it comes to Office 365 and Microsoft products, I've got a lot of experience with that one. So I figured, hey, it's only fitting. Also, if you want to catch me in person, I'll be speaking at the Power Platform Conference in Orlando. Let's see, a little under a month from now. If you haven't registered yet and you want to go, you can use discount code EMG, and that'll save you $50 off of your registration. Also, as we're going through this, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I have got another device over here that's monitoring chat, so I can actually see it while I'm looking at the slides here as well. So without further ado, let's go on. So the first thing, and actually I want to look, we got some, see if we got any responses. We got 5 responses. Woo. All right, so if we're talking about the different areas that we're looking at, so we've got a few. We got some experts on forms. We got some people who worked with it, got a little bit. Power Automate, we got some a little bit less. PowerApps, a little lower, and then Teams, everybody. It's one of those things. Oh, we got another response. Woo. So Teams is one of those ones that everybody uses, especially throughout the pandemic. So we're not going to be covering a lot about what Teams is because we've all used it. But some of the other areas, we're going to talk about how we can combine all these different tools together and create some actually pretty cool solutions. We still have stuff coming in. Okay, so we have quite a few people that are fairly familiar with forms. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the thing about Microsoft Forms is its whole purpose is to be able to quickly and easily set up a way of being able to gather information from people. You don't have to have a whole lot of extra information. You don't have to have a lot of skills required. It's fairly easy. Drag, drop, make your changes, almost WYSIWYG. So the beauty is you can create a form in minutes. The one I got that we set up for the question there, it took all of maybe 30 seconds. So not that tricky. Also, you can send it to anyone. As you all have noticed, I set that up in my community tenant, the tenant I use for my SharePoint 9 tenant. This is the one I use for doing community contributions. And anybody can respond to it. Also, you get the real-time results. As you noticed, we're looking at a second there. As people are responding, things update, and we get that information. So we can do that. Now, Teams also has the ability to integrate this functionality, but it's one of those things you have to be the organizer or one of the presenters on the meeting to be able to set up beforehand and be able to add that functionality. So didn't have that, so I figured I'll just go do it on my side thing. So the beauty of it is you can create surveys, quizzes, and polls. And a lot of it is, especially if you're creating surveys, you have that information. But if you're creating quizzes, you can actually score those quizzes and people can get their responses afterwards. 1 second. So as part of that, they can know their score if you want to let them see it, or they can do it other ways. Also with those quizzes, you can have information where you can shuffle up those questions. So that way somebody can't say, hey, hey, George, what'd you get for question number 2? Because now they're all submitted in different orders, and so nobody can really kind of cheat the system that way. And also we can now export that data. So let's go ahead and look at what it takes to create a form. So as you can see here, I've got one up, but we'll go ahead and create another one here. And this is going to kind of drive our demo as we're going forward. So if you go to forms.microsoft.com, I have a few different forms. Forms are nice because they can be owned by me and shared out with other people, or they can also be owned by a group. So there are different groups here that I belong to that I can create a form as part of. There are benefits and drawbacks of either way. So if you're creating a form, it's yours. And some of the integration points we'll talk about later simplify that process. If the form is owned by a group, anybody that's in that group can actually go in and work with that form. So it simplifies the process a lot, but it does complicate if you're getting into the Power Automate flows. The connectors don't quite understand that concept to be able to automatically show them to you. So we'll look at that in a bit. So for simplicity on this one, we're just going to go ahead and create a new form. So as part of this, first thing it wants a name. What are we going to call this? So we're going to call this Charlotte Area. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, you know what? A lot of this demo, as far as I was preparing this, like, hey, we got a problem here. We're thinking we're in the land of Oz. how do we manage these issues that we've got? How do we work with this issue? So as you manage, we're all familiar with the yellow brick road. How is it that the Wizard of Oz has implemented a system to be able to manage the maintenance of the yellow brick road? It's very well traveled, get a lot of people on it, so it's something that needs to be maintained. So talking about that, we're going, okay, this particular form, we're going to call this one a road report. We can add in a description. Okay. And we can include other things we want. I got a question. Is it true you can only transfer to a group, not to an individual? Transfer, as you mean as far as ownership? I am not 100% sure. I think you can transfer, but yeah, the transferring between the two areas has been finicky. I haven't played with it recently to see if that's still an issue, but has been in the past that you can transfer between people, no problem. You can transfer once it's in a group. It's definitely a lot more involved to be able to get in and out. Also with forms, there are ways you can actually transfer ownership. For example, if somebody leaves the organization, you can say, hey, for this user, I want all their forms. I'm going to come claim and reassign ownership of those to somebody else. But yeah, once it's into a group, it's pretty much there. And then, which is a good thing because the group doesn't lose. If a group's owner goes away, the group still stays put and everybody still has access to things. So that is definitely a very good question. All right, so if we're going to go ahead and create our questions here, we have a few options. So they default us with the most common. So we've got a choice, we've got text, we've got rating, and we've got a date. So the first thing we're going to go is we're going to say road condition. Oh, buttons here. I am not typing, everybody's watching. All right, with this, I can allow them to be able to select multiples, and I can say, hey, I want it to be required. So this one, I definitely want to required. I'm going to require some text here, and we're going to say milepost. So we can gather that information. So we can have some ratings as well. Like I could have done this as a rating option, and we'll do a date. Now, some of the other options we've got. So we have ranking, so they can kind of adjust to things. The one I used for the survey earlier was a Likert. Allows you to be able to do a gauged view of it. Also, this is one of the ones that's kind of nice, is you can actually upload a file. So you can say, hey, I want to upload an image, for example, of something that's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and add this on here. As you can see, it tells you that the folder is going to be created in OneDrive. Okay, that's where it's going to store that response, where it's going to store that image. And I say, okay, cool. What? No. Cool. And file 1 meg, 10 meg files. Okay, cool. Now, as part of that, we've got the form in here. Okay, we've got what we need. I can gather the information. But now let's customize this. So by default, they have some different theme ideas. I can say, hey, I want to go basic with just a color scheme. I can go with one of their suggested themes, or I can also pick my own image. So if I say, hey, I want to upload an image, okay, we got an image here of Charlotte, add. Okay, now as part of this, I can also manually specify the color schemes, because when you upload an image, Forms does a pretty good job of identifying, hey, these are relative colors that associate well with this image. But if I want to, I can also force a color scheme. Say your organization has a color palette. They have a branding guide that you have to follow. You can definitely take advantage of that. From there, if we come over here, we've got items for doing settings. So for settings, the first thing is who can respond and who can fill out this form. Now, you'll notice, though, we kind of got a limited option here. And the reason is because I'm using a file upload. So if you're using a file upload, you have the only options you've got are people within your organization. So kind of limiting that way, but it makes sense with the way we've got to upload it. We have the options, like I said, anybody can respond, or only people in the organization, and I can get their name, and I can also limit it to one response. So that way, if somebody's going to respond to the form, and it's one of those, hey, I only want you to respond once, they get one, and even without recording name, we can still do a single response. So in this case, I do want to record that, but in this scenario, only a single road report means I got to hire a lot of people to do that job. Also, if I wanted to, I can limit it to specific groups. Okay, only specific people in the organization. So I'm going to stick with anybody. And then we have the options about whether the accept responses is whether the form is open. I can go ahead and say, nope, I'm going to shut it down now, or I can set a start and end date. Say, hey, I want to open it up on this date. I want to close it at this date. I can also set durations, shuffle questions, and if there's a progress bar, we're moving through the form, and then some other different options. Now, one of the things I didn't show is we do have the ability on our questions to also be able to do branching. So I can say, hey, you know what? On this particular case, if the row condition is awful, I'm going to require a description. Okay, I'll make it a long answer. I'm going to move this guy up. Okay, so if the condition is great, I'm going to leave it. We'll come in here, set up our branching. Okay, if it's great, we're going to go to milepost. If it's okay, go to description. There we go. So now as we're filling out this form, based off of what information I'm putting in there, we'll get different forms. We'll get different responses. So you can kind of tailor these up a little bit. All right, so from there, we can see we have responses. At this point in time, I don't have any, but I can come into preview and I can see what this looks like. So on our particular form, because I put in a branching, it doesn't show the rest of the form. It only shows the one until I respond. So if I say it's great, we can see now we get the rest of it. If I say, it's okay, then now we get the option. So I can go ahead, I'm going to put in great, milepost 1, inspection date is today. And I'm not, in this particular case, I'm not, I made it required, so you have to put in a joke. All right, so let's go ahead and grab, not a condition picture of the road, but we'll call it good. And I can submit. So now if we go back, I can see I now have one response, and it creates all these nice charts for us. There's no descriptions. And we say, hey, we got one on milepost 1. We have all the information there. Now, as part of this, I can also open this in Excel, export all the data out. I can also clear it all out for it, give people a link. Now, one thing I forgot to mention on summary on our preview is I can also see what it would look like on a mobile device. So you can say, hey, somebody gets this email in a form on their company device, and they respond for it. So especially if you're looking at the condition of a road, you kind of need to make sure this actually works on a mobile device. So I can say, hey, yep, everything looks great. Okay, everything works. Nice. And there we go. So to now share the form, I can come in and click collect responses, and I can copy the URL. Also, if I don't like this really ugly, nasty, long URL, because it is ugly, I can also say, hey, I want to shorten the URL up. And so now instead of that long of a URL, it is that long. Okay, so there are ways that can kind of make it better to be able to make the job a little easier. Also, if I want to share it out, we can set up a QR code that I can say, hey, yep, I'm just going to download it. Or if I want to embed it, we have plenty of options about collecting those responses. All right, that being said, are there any other questions on forms? All right, looks like quiet. So we'll move on, and we can come back to that. But the nice part is forms is fairly easy. Like I said, it makes it easy to get up and going. And we'll start up here. We've done our demo. All right, so now the Power Platform. So as I mentioned, there is a Power Platform conference, which is talking about all of this. So imagine this, a week-long conference of just nothing but this stuff. Cool, right? So what we've got is we have, as part of the Power Platform, we have 3 main areas. We've got Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. So Power BI allows us to measure, does your charting. PowerApps allows your users to be able to interact and create forms. So for example, we can take our existing form that we created and make it more advanced, make it look cooler. And then we have Power Automate to go automate those processes in the end and automate all the things. So there's a lot that's been added to it with process automation and being able to use the Power Automate desktop to be able to automate your computer. A lot of cool stuff. We're not going to be getting into those levels today, but we're going to start out. So PowerApps, like I said, is fairly easy, allows you to connect to data and systems you're already using. So if you're in the Microsoft 365 platform, there are connectors to connect directly to SharePoint, for example. If you're connecting to lists or a SharePoint list, connecting to Excel file, you have plenty of options to be able to create things. Also, you can create it fairly quickly. There's a little more knowledge involved or required as compared to Microsoft Forms, but it is still fairly easy. And then any of those apps you create are available to users on the web or on mobile devices. And we'll look at that a little bit later. Okay, so we can do some really cool stuff, but, and we mentioned you can publish it to the web. So as you can see from here, we can do screen captures. We can do camera access. We can do signatures. We can access the GPS location of the device. Really kind of cool. And then now the cool part about this is if you've not done any app development for these different mobile platforms, it's an involved process. So this simplifies it a lot that you don't have to go through the App Store. There is a Power Platform app that allows you to be able to publish those apps to your users of your organization. Nothing required. They just have to go down to whatever app store that is for their device, and they can now download that PowerApps app, and they can now consume and use your applications. All right, so to make this work, we're gonna go ahead and create a Power App. So now to make this work, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a new list just so we have some place to store this content. So I'm going to go from blank. I'm going to call this Charlotte. Okay, show it in navigation, sure, why not? Okay, so as we've all dealt with SharePoint lists before, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but I'm going to go ahead and recreate similar information that we're gathering here. So we have road condition. I'm just going to go ahead and stick that in title. We got description. So let's go ahead and add a multi-line text. Okay, make sure we get it all. So we got description, milepost, and date. And I'm going to limit this one to be a number. Mileposts are all numeric. Decimal places, none. And date, we'll go ahead and here, inspection. All right, cool. So now we have this basic list, and we can take advantage of this, and we're going to use it both from Forms and through PowerApps. So we have a couple different things we can do. If I wanted to, I can come in to integrate under PowerApps, and I can customize the form, which would allow me to be able to update and change out the UI that gets rendered here. In this case, I want to do a little bit more than that, so I'm not going to go quite that route. But what I am going to do is I'm going to come over to my app launcher here, and okay, fine. Where'd you go? We're going to go here, and I'm going to say, yep. Oh, I didn't do that. Loads. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead. Ooh. Forget that part later. All right, so I can go through. Enough with that. I'm just going to go ahead and create a blank app, or I can go with create a 3-screen app. Now, a lot of times, if you're wanting to start with something basic, get up and going fast, this is going to be the quickest way. If you want to really customize the experience, a blank app is going to be your best option. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. Yes, Power Platform Conference, I know. Okay, so which account do I want to use? I'm going to use my account. Okay, let's see. It's not showing my site, so I'm going to go ahead and go grab my URL. And I want the Charlotte Road report. And this does take it a little time to get things up and running. But one of the things I forgot to mention that actually is pretty cool you can do with Power Automate is you can also do mixed reality. So think you've got your camera on the device and you want to be able to see and put images overlay over what the camera sees. So it's got some really cool stuff that can do that way. So from here we can see we have our basic view. Okay, so we have all the different components and screens that we're working with on the left. This is our design pane. We can come in, we can change up, I can do a search. And then I can also, this is our details view. Why is this not clicking? There we go. Okay, I can expand and we have different options. So I have my title, which is going to be the item title, and it's going to have a body, which this has, I then linked it to, which field are you on? Tied it to milepost, because yeah, that totally makes sense. Subtitle is description, which I'm not surprised by, but I guess we can leave that one. All right. So I think that looks all right. If we go to our second screen, so we got our details screen, this is going to list out what we've got. As part of this, I can also pull in images. So if we have an association, I can put in an image field and I can render that in there. So if we come back to our list, add in a column, this is going to be hyperlink. Now, one of the things, anytime you make changes like that, you also have to make sure you go tell PowerApps that you made a change. So you can come here on the left and click on data. Click on the ... and tell it to refresh. Now, by default, it's not going to go ahead and make any changes. So on this particular form, if I want to include extra information, I now have to say, hey, let's look at the edit the fields. And this still has not rendered it yet. So we'll give it a minute. It hasn't updated. But we'll go ahead and carry on here. So with that, I now have my app. So I can go ahead and we'll go back to our main screen and go ahead and hit start. So I can refresh from the list, which there's still nothing there. If I say I want a new, this is going to be, granted, remember we set it up that it's on our form, we got questions. So I'm gonna duplicate that scenario. We can always change this out and customize it to make it match. Description. Milepost 1. So the beginning of the real yellow brick road, everything's happy. Our date, we're gonna set to today. We're all good. And I hit OK. Okay. And it's just that easy. Now, if we go back to our list, normally SharePoint will also automatically refresh and pick up that we got a new item, but I'm just going to go ahead and force it because I'm impatient. And we now have our item there. Super easy. And just to show you, if I come over to my mobile device, I can refresh. Make sure that pulls the right app. Nope, I gotta make sure it publishes first. Okay, once our edit's done, I can now take our app, I'm going to save it. Okay, so we're gonna, instead of calling it just app, we're gonna call this Charlotte. And while that saves, next it's gonna ask us, cool, now we gotta send it out. Who do we want to send it to? Hold on a second here, my phone, decline, go away. Okay, so who do I want to share it with? In this tenant, it's just mostly me anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it with the default here. All right, so now everything's good. I can come down and I can refresh. And come on, refresh. Do a search. All right, well, give me 1 second. I'm just going to close that down and I'm going to relaunch. Come on. No results found. I know there are results. Make sure I picked up the right account. Yep. just to make sure. All apps, there it is. Okay, we got our Charlotte Road report. So as you noticed, I didn't have to do anything fancy to deploy this to my phone. I just pulled it up from the PowerApps app, and now the information is here. So I can come in, I can add, I can edit, and everything looks good that way. All right. Are there any questions on PowerApps? And I'm hearing crickets. So, all right. Okay, so the next part is we have Power Automate. So Power Automate is super easy to be able to go and automate whatever process you've got. And the beauty is users that are familiar with the process, that are using their situations on a daily basis, they can take advantage and create an Power Automate flow that automates the whole process for them, which is great because they know all the ins and outs of what's going on instead of somebody in IT trying to figure it out and be like, okay, well, I guess this is what we got, try and figure it out. So Power Automate allows people to be able to go. So what is a flow in Power Automate? It is nothing more than a trigger and actions. So a trigger, you say, hey, what starts this process? Okay, so we have manual, you can create schedule, you can go based off of events. Okay, they've got the names of, you got automated, triggered, and I forget, manual, I think it's still the other one. And we'll look at that in a minute. And then after that, you have a list of all of your actions. So those actions can be, as in this case shows here, send an email. That action can be post a message to Teams. That action can be a condition to do some checks. We can do some looping. We can do a whole bunch of different things. So with that as well, there are a lot of different templates out there. Now, one thing I do have to warn you on, and this is something I was at a conference a few weeks ago, somebody mentioned that actually is a good point, is that in Power Automate, there are a lot of templates that can do pretty much a lot of different things. So I'm going to say pretty much anything you want. But the problem is they're not always up to date. These are not 100% published by Microsoft. These are published by a lot by Microsoft and some by the community. As such, the problem ends up being somebody that may not have, whether it's Microsoft or community, may not have updated their template. So you may have Microsoft updates newer connectors or other vendors provide newer updated connectors, and the templates are still using the old one because it's not been updated. So definitely keep that in mind. It's a good way to get a good idea of, hey, how could I do this? Then you can also make adjustments. So can this replace Asana? We use Asana to manage workflow and tasks that different folks use. You can use it in conjunction with. So with Power Automate, it can definitely handle the process automation, so workflows. But then you can combine it with other things within the Microsoft platform, whether it's to-do or planner or project, and then you can combine all those pieces together to manage your tasks and then automate the processes and lifecycle of those tasks. You can say, hey, when this planner task gets to this state, this is what I want to go happen. Go create another task for George. We can definitely take advantage of that. I'm not sure 100% what the functionality is in Asana because I haven't really used it. But if from the description here, if it's just workflows and tasks, there are definitely things within the Microsoft platform that we can take advantage of. All right. So now what we're going to do, we're going to create a flow to be able to, a Power Automate flow to be able to take the information from our form, because right now it is just standalone. We have the one single response that does not match what's in SharePoint. I want to get this also into our SharePoint list. So we've got a couple of different routes of getting people access to things. So I can come into the launcher here and I can click on Power Automate, definitely make sure, open in a new tab. Just because I want to keep the old place to get back to it. All right, it's going to start and good. And we'll deal with that later. Okay, so we have a lot of information. Yes, I know about the platform. So as mentioned, there are templates, okay? All sorts of different templates, okay? There are thousands of different templates out there, and you can kind of search which template you want to take advantage of. So in our case, I can look and say, hey, I want to look for forms. I can see, okay, create a task planner in Planner from Microsoft Forms and post a message in Teams. Okay, cool. And you have a lot of different things. So just to show you, though, how easy it is to create from scratch, I'm going to go ahead and create one. And this is going to be, and these are the options we've got. So we've got an automated, which is a triggered event. Instant, you hit a button. So that's their manual. Scheduled, say, hey, I want to run this at the end of every day. I want to run it every couple hours, what have you. And then you got your desktop flows. So that is being able to do automation on my machine that is now managed through the Power Automate platform. So for this one, I'm going to do this. We're going to go Charlotte Road. So, and I can see it already says, hey, yeah, when a new response is submitted, and it says Microsoft Forms. I can also search and find it as well. Okay, so I'll answer that question quick. So where does this recording get stored? So we're going to be recording it, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be posted to the Charlotte area user group YouTube page, and I'm sure we can pull that link up again later.
Yeah, it's going to be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube. I'll get that link out now.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click create. And as was mentioned, it's creating that trigger for us. Cool. Now, as I mentioned, a Power Automate flow is nothing more than a trigger and actions. So our trigger is that somebody submits a new response. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the form. So this is one of those areas where I mentioned the difference between a personally owned form and a group-owned form. Group-owned forms are ones that won't show up in here. So you kind of have to go into forms, get its ID, tell it you want to put in a custom value, and post it in. So this one, I know what the one I want, so we're good. From here, I can now put in a new step, because the interesting thing, I'm not sure, a lot of the actions within Power Automate, when something's triggered, they give you a lot of, pretty much all the information. Like if you have a SharePoint item being modified or created, that trigger will give you all the information back about it. The forms trigger does not. So if you're going to be taking advantage of this one, you have to put in a second connection. So this one would be like forms to get the response details. All right, so from here, I can select the form again. And then from there, I can take advantage and come over to the side here. I need to get the ID, the identifier, for the response that was submitted. So as we can see, well, we have one value coming back out of our trigger here, which is our response ID. Groovy. All right, from here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to create the item in SharePoint. Okay, so we have a lot of different options here. And not create file, create item. Which SharePoint site do I want? Oh, you're going to be silly. So I'll just do a custom value. Okay, once I put in the URL, no, I know that works. $401. Oh, okay, fine. Let's try a different connection here. There we go. Okay, so we have this. I can come down. It doesn't show it now. Let's paste it in. Okay, there. Now that it's happy, I can come in, I can select the list, and it gives me the list of all the lists. And if it's a library, it gives you all the libraries on that particular site. Once I select it, now I have the ability to be able to put in the information. So we had said our first title, we're going to use the row condition. Description is description, milepost. Need to expand this a little bit more. Oh, it doesn't like it because I told it was a number and not a string. All right, we'll come back to that. Okay, submission time, that's also not scene one. I want, when was the inspection performed? Okay, image URL. Let's see, does it give us? It's not giving us the access to the picture. Oh, there, picture of the room. There we go. Cool. So with that, I can save it, but just to kind of show how we can integrate it, what we're going to do is I'm going to do a couple extra things. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create an approval item. So I'm going to say, hey, I want an approval. So I select start and wait for Teams. Now we can see we have a bunch of different connectors here. And since it was mentioned about Asana, you can connect directly to Asana if you want as well, if you also want to automate some things in there. Approval. I'm going to click start and wait for an approval. Approval type, I'm going to say, hey, whoever responds first, And then this is new node report. Please. Cool. Assigned to me. Details, and the nice part is this is all marked down, so it's simple and easy to work with it. I can come in and say, hey, here are the details. We can say condition and not from runtime, and I can come down and find our form, and I can say condition. There we go, row condition. Description. From here, go milepost. Cool. Item link. I can also come down from our create item. Since I've now got that item within SharePoint, we have a link to item. And then just the item description, I'm going to call title. Okay, so now what this is going to do, it's going to require an approval. So I'll have an option to be able to approve, and I'll have an option to reject. So when that's done, I'm going to add in a condition that if the outcome, so the result from that particular previous action, is equal to approve, I am now going to post a message in Teams. So I'm going to create, so check, make sure they haven't renamed things on me. Post message in chat or channel. Cool. Okay. I can call it as, I'm going to post it as me. Post in, we'll call it in channel. Cool. Which Teams it in? Hopefully it picks it up. Yep. Emerald City, channel. We'll call it Yellow Brick Road. And review. Okay, subject, road report. So from here, just to simplify on time, I'm going to come back and grab our link to the item again, and we're off and running. So from here, we can see Flow is saying, hey, we got a problem. Run this. Okay, so we're all good there. There are also timeframes if once I save this, if you go back to the details. Yes, I know it's ready to go. If I turn off my flow, you'll notice it complains, and I'll get a flow checker error saying, hey, there's a problem with your flow. Yeah, it's turned off. Like, I know, so I did it on purpose. So keep in mind that there is that. It will nag you saying there's a problem if you do turn it off. All right, so now that that's in place, I can come back to our form here, even go into preview, and I can say, okay, say lion stalking travelers in the forest. Okay, I'll pull a picture again. Cool. Now, what we can do is I can come back into my flow and I can test this, because a lot of times on the triggers, there can be a delay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on manually, and I'm going to hit test. So what this is going to do now is it's sitting here waiting for me to submit a response so I can test and verify how things are going. Okay, so now as soon as I hit submit, oh, lovely. All right, so as we can see with the image, we now have a problem that is trying to pass in the image URL, but it's passing in a lot of extra information, which really all I need is the link attribute. So just for sake of time, I'm going to remove that guy. Hit save. All right, once that's done, the beauty of this is now that I've got that run in there, I don't have to go in and submit a whole new form. Power Automate, save. There we go. To be able to verify I've got everything working, and I can say, hey, I want to test it. Automatic, recent trigger, and I can say, hey, here's the one I had that failed. So this also works really handy if you've got one, whichever. If you've got one that now says, hey, you have a flow run that failed, you can step through and see exactly where it's failing and see if you need to make any adjustments. But as you notice, the beauty of Power Automate is it shows where all these problems end up being. So I can see, hey, yep, these steps are all green, everything's good. Or I can say, hey, okay, we're sitting here waiting for an approval. And we're waiting. And we're waiting. And this is going to be delivered with this particular action. It gets delivered in a couple different ways. So first off, I'll come into my Teams here. And I can click on my feed, and eventually this is supposed to show. Okay. My window froze. All right, let's try Teams. Try the web version to see if that works. Oh, that's also loading. We'll pull up Outlook. Which one gets there first? Oh, why are you starting out there? It should be here. Silly Teams. Nope. Nothing yet. There we go. No, this is our chat. All right, where'd it go? All right, well, usually it's a lot faster than that. I'm not sure what it's stalling out on, but also by taking advantage and using that start and wait for an approval action, it works out really nice because there are options where I can just send an email and do the same process. But with the waiting for an approval, it will also in the activity feed give them a message saying, hey, you've got this item to go approve, shows them the details, gives them approve, reject buttons with an area for comments. I'm not sure why they're being slow. All right, well, maybe we'll have to wrap up, but it does work pretty cool.
Did you run that as a test, or did you just run it?
That one was as a test.
Okay.
So yeah, it's still thinking it's running, so it's still in the test. But actually, this window is weird. Died. Let me go ahead and force a reload on this. Maybe that's why it didn't actually go. Well, also works as well. I can come in and see, hey, we've got our information here. Says it's still running. I highly doubt that something is not working correctly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our failed run and show that we can do a resubmit and run it again. Now, hopefully this one responds a little better. Because like I said, usually the start and wait for an approval is fast. I'm wondering if it's complaining about the Dataverse connection that I said I had to run to be able to get it going. There we go. Now it's showing up. Cool. All right, so now we can see in my activity feed, I have a message saying that Ryan Schouten sent you a request. New road request, please review. Cool. So I can come in here. Here's the information we passed in. We can say, hey, we got a lion stalking travelers in the forest. We have attachments, which that is pulling up in the wrong window here. Anyway, also as part of it, we can see who else is on the status on this request. So I can say, will take care. Cool. And I can say approve. And we're good. So now you can see now I got another message saying it's approved. We can see all the status. We can go verify all this information. We also have integration with other tools like Adobe Sign and DocuSign. If I go into my Teams, Where's my Emerald City at? There we are. Okay, no, I did put it in Yellow Brick Road. Okay, so we now see that I've got this message posted since I said to post it as me. We're all good. All right, we're gonna say send the monkeys. Cool, and we're off and running. All right, I know we're about at time, so I'll wrap it up real quick. And that's it. So if there are any questions, go ahead and let me know. We can ask them in chat. But all of this is made fairly easy. And the beauty of all these tools is we can connect them together and make them work. The Power Automate is also a lot of times the glue that ties all these different tools together and allows us to be able to send the information to different areas. So that being said, thank you for attending. If there are not any questions, you got my contact information if you think of something after, and thank you for coming today.
Thanks, Ryan. That was really thorough. You really moved through it. I really appreciate from the presenter perspective, dealing with all the nuances of demos going off the rails and things not working as they're supposed to in real time. You handled that like a real pro. No, it's really cool to see the output of combining all these different services together to create a business solution. That's something that I really gravitate toward whenever I do this, like, you know, SharePoint Fest. I'm always speaking on business process automation, and like it's the package. Like individually, these apps are powerful, but when you start combining them into something, you can do some really cool stuff and like some really like no code, low code solutions with it. So it's really awesome that you were able to put that together and present for us here this month.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll stick around for just another couple of minutes, just in case there are any other questions that pop up. I did post the link to our YouTube channel in the chat window for those of you that are attending here live today. And we will make this recording available on YouTube. I'm going to get that uploaded as soon as I can, hopefully sometime later this afternoon. Ryan, just need to get a little bit of information from you, make sure we tag it appropriately so you can reference it for your MVP community contributions, and make sure we get tagged on that. But we'll stick around just a couple more minutes in case anybody has any questions. We'll take those offline, but I want to thank everybody for being here this week, this month, and we are going to continue to once a month for the rest of the year. We got a couple of speakers lined up. We got some cool topics to talk about. I know Daniel Christian is eager to talk about Yammer, some administrative stuff, so we'll have that coming up shortly. But thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, all.